This is Jim Fetzer, your host on The Real Deal, continuing and concluding my conversation with Leuren, Moret, and Christina Consolo about Fukushima. I really am at your disposal because the two of you are the experts. I know we want to address the 28 indications that that the West Coast is being fried with nuclear radiation, but I leave it to your discretion as to how we shall proceed. Leuren?
We have links to, we have this article and other articles. We'll send it all to you, and you can weave it into the interview.
Yes, well, Bill Fox, to whom I'm very indebted for arranging these interviews, will be preparing transcripts of our conversations for publications as articles in Veterans Today, and he would be very pleased to include the links to any articles you want to add, Leuren, and of course any graphics you want to provide for the publication in VT.
Sure. Okay, Christina, how about if we each read one of these 28 signs on the Pacific coast of North America?
Sure.
So the first one, which we mentioned already, is polar bears, seals, and walruses along the Alaska coastline suffering from fur loss and open sores, and that's also been reported in the moose population. There's a big moose die-off from the Pacific coast to the Atlantic along the Canadian-U.S. border. So you go ahead and do number two.
Number two was the epidemic of sea lion deaths along the California coastline. But I also want to mention that they had an unusual event as far down as San Diego this year, where seal pups were being abandoned in much greater numbers than what the rescues were used to seeing. And they still don't have an explanation about why these seal pups were abandoned. They were all underweight, and some of them have been rehabilitated and put back into nature. But these events are really escalating. They're moving right up the coast.
Could it be that from the evolutionary point of view, the seal population, the mothers recognize when they have offspring that aren't likely to be capable of sustaining their way, and therefore they abandon them early to not invest more maternal resources in their upbringing when their prospects are so slender?
Yeah, that's a definite possibility.
The other thing that happens is that when a population is put under stress, and the young are affected the most by toxins and so forth, and it weakens them and they can't keep up with the mothers, or they get lost or left behind. The mothers just can't take care of them or find them when they come back to where they thought they were. So 45% of the pups born in June have died in Southern California along the coast. That's a very high death rate. It's the same as the infant mortality. And when you see phenomena occurring in humans and in animal populations, it has to be an environmental cause.
Yeah, it's all profoundly disturbing.
Continue. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so did you have anything else to say, Christina?
No, I did try to track someone down at NOAA to comment on the seal mortality and what was found in terms of the testing for radioactive materials, because Enenews had reported over a year ago that they did find radiation in the seals, but that it wasn't above what they expected it to be for normal background. However, they never indicated if it was cesium or strontium or what they tested for and what the levels were. And when I tried to call NOAA to pin somebody down with this, I got such a runaround. In fact, some of it I did on air on my show, and we kept getting sent to David Kelly, and then I would call David Kelly and say, oh, you want the David Kelly in Hawaii. And then I would call him, and they would send me to someone else. And what I found out was that they actually carved up these seals and sent them to 20 different labs for testing. You know, they sent the whiskers to one lab, and they sent the teeth to another lab, and they sent the skin from the dorsal area to another lab. And so, I mean, they're kind of doing, it's like the Manhattan Project, but in
Same
reverse.
thing. It's the same thing.
Where they divide up all the information, knowing these people probably won't talk to each other and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. So number 3 is that along the Pacific coast of Canada and the Alaska coastline, the population of sockeye salmon is at a historic low. Many are blaming Fukushima, and certainly this woman, she's a professional biologist, has fundraised and done a study on the salmon in British Columbia, in the Fraser River and other rivers. And this is an area where a large orca population will summer. The resident orcas that live in a particular area, they come and migrate and spend the whole summer there, and they usually arrive with new baby orcas, so they're feeding them too. They live on salmon populations. The other orcas that are called transient populations, they live on marine sea mammals, and they travel in groups of 3 so that they're quiet and they can sneak up on the sea mammals, seals and stuff. And so they have very different diets, and we're going to see the effects of the radiation and the difference in the diet in these populations over time. And I predict that the coastal salmon, the resident populations, are going to have a more severe impact because the salmon are going out in the Pacific. They're eating smaller fish. It bioconcentrates the radiation. And we just have to wait and see. But this woman who did the study and independently raised the money to have these salmon lab analyzed, they have very severe viruses, and that indicates immune system damage, as well as a slimy starfish goo. The starfish are just kind of melting along the North Pacific coast.
Oh, God.
And then the jellyfish also. So that really sounds like a viral infection or some kind of a bacterial viral slime on them.
But, the exposure to radiation will affect their immune systems or their capacity to cope with otherwise, threats to their environment they might normally be able to deal with, and therefore make them far more vulnerable to these kinds of diseases and related problems.
Number 4 was something is causing fish all along the west coast of Canada to bleed from their gills, bellies, and eyeballs. I mean, bleeding and bruising is a hallmark of radiation exposure. I'm sure there's mutations of viruses and bacteria that could be making these fish sick. They're indicating from this article that it's in multiple species. Now, I did call several fisheries over the last few days in Canada, one in the Great Lakes region, Purdy's, and another in the Vancouver area. And both of the people that I spoke to at those fisheries were very forthcoming. They all knew about Fukushima. They knew that there was a potential for it to be affecting their catches. They did report from both the Great Lakes region and from BC that they're experiencing lows in their catch. Nothing historic, but that it was kind of across the board. But neither organization had noted any increase of disease. And when I asked them who's testing the fish for radiation, they said that that wasn't their job. That happened after the fish leave their marketplace.
After the fish leave their marketplace.
Yeah. So
they're getting into the food chain for the human population, and only then they're going to be tested? Not likely, because the retailers are going to want to market it and make their profit. I mean, no one cares about the health of the consumer.
Well,
Right.
they don't just balkanize countries, they balkanize the media too. So that's what's happening.
It all needs to be tested, and Leuren had brought up in an interview that she did last week with Alfred Weber that, I mean, there's a serious economic impact to this disaster that we're just now starting to realize, and obviously it's going to be, you know, affecting the fishing industry pretty severely.
Just as has happened in the Gulf Coast from the BP disaster. I mean, it's just wiped out whole industries there. It's
Right.
But what they're doing is they're out there fishing like mad. They're scraping the bottom. They have these huge nets that are a mile wide. They're just taking everything indiscriminately, and feeding it, and turning it in, counting it, freezing it, and turning it into human food. This is just how they spread the radiation everywhere. They want everyone exposed. Just exactly what they're doing in Japan by burning radioactive trash all over Japan. Number 5 is a vast field of radioactive debris from Fukushima that is approximately the size of California or Texas, is crossing the Pacific Ocean. It's already crossed, and it's starting to collide with the West Coast.
that's stunning. That's stunning.
That's right. And there's a very good article, October 18th, by Greg Ray in the Herald newspaper in Australia. It's called "The Ocean is Broken." And this is by a sailor who made many trips, yacht races across the Pacific. And what he's saying now, he sailed his boat from Osaka to San Francisco recently. He said, quote, "The next leg of the long voyage was from Osaka to San Francisco. And for most of that trip, the desolation was tinged with nauseous horror and a degree of fear." He said, "After we left Japan, it felt as if the ocean itself was dead. We hardly saw any living things. We saw one whale sort of rolling helplessly on the surface with what looked like a big tumor on its head. It was pretty sickening. I've done a lot of miles on the ocean in my life, and I'm used to seeing turtles, dolphins, sharks, and big flurries of feeding birds. But this time, for 3,000 nautical miles, there was nothing alive to be seen. In place of the missing life was garbage in astounding volumes. In a lot of places, we couldn't start out our motor for fear of entangling the propeller in the massive pieces of rope and cable. That's an unheard of situation out in the ocean. If we did decide to motor, we couldn't do it at night, only in the daytime, with a lookout on the bow watching for rubbish. On the bow, in the waters above Hawaii, you could see right down into the depths. I could see that the debris isn't just on the surface, it's all the way down. And it's all sizes, from a soft drink bottle to pieces the size of a big car or truck. We saw a factory chimney sticking out of the water with some kind of boiler thing still attached below the surface. We saw a big container-type thing just rolling over and over on the waves. We were reeving around these pieces of debris. It was like sailing through a garbage pile.
Unbelievable.
That is reality. That is what is happening.